Welcome back to the Strong Women Podcast. I'm so glad you're here. My guest today is Jean Marie Davis. Jean Marie and I got to sit down face to face because we were both attending the Alliance Defending Freedom Summit Conference this past summer. And Jean Marie's story is remarkable and horrific and redemptive all at the same time. I also want to give you a heads up of what to expect in this conversation. Jean Marie recounts her story so calmly and just like bullet points, like this happened, then this happened, then this happened. And the events are horrific. It's almost too much to take in. And she just recounts it so calmly because she's told her story so many times. But I hope you'll stick with it and listen because this story is so powerful. Because if anybody has reached the deepest, darkest pit of despair, it's Jean Marie. She lived through events that we can hardly imagine. But you guys, her story is so beautiful, as you can guess, because of the work of Christ in her life. And so stick with the story, and I want you to hear the whole of it and how God not only reached down, because there's no pit too dark, he was there, and he reached in, and he gently grabbed her and set her on solid ground, surrounded her with people who love him and love her, and has also given her purpose in her life. I'm not going to tell any more of this story because I want you to hear it from her. So here we go. Enjoy. Jean Marie, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
I'm so honored to be sitting at the same table with you.
Oh boy.
Oh boy.
Interesting.
I can already tell it's going to be interesting. I got to talk with you just a little bit beforehand, and you're fun. You're a party. Okay, I've heard things about you, and it's hard. And can you share it?
Yes, I can. Depends on what you would like to hear, how depth you want to go. Depends on how far the pain you want to deal with, right? So from 2, it started my pain. So from 2 to 29. 2 is when I got introduced to men sitting on men's laps, watching football games, basketball games. At 4, when my dad introduced me to my first beer. 6, when my grandfather introduced me to my first cigarette. Right. At 11, my dad telling me that I was only good to lay on my back and I would only be married to a pimp if I would, in a pimp or hoe relationship. By 12, I was doing LSD, shrooms, and acid. By 16, I was being gang raped. Right. I was being passed around, money being passed.
Did your dad know all this was going on?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
My dad, my cousin, my uncle, molestation ran deep in my family. There was times where I had to watch neighbors being beaten, children coming across the street, gang members, drug deals. My mom's not around that much. She's working. Me taking care of myself at the age of 6. You walking to school at the age of 5, with no parents or anything, that was life. And then when you end up at 18, dealing with cocaine and marijuana, and then your parents find it and say, get out. And you become homeless, and then you're sleeping on a floor in a house with 7, 8 kids in the hood, and you have nowhere to go and you want to come home, and you hear that phone call from your mom saying, no, you can't come home. And you're homeless, you have no money, what do you do, right? And so that's when I introduce, and I always tell this to everybody, my story is my story. It's not to do any, difference from anybody else, but I was in it for so long that things that I experience is not what most women experience. And so at 18, I walked into it. Not a lot of people realize that. I walked into sex trafficking because I needed money. I needed a place to live. So I had got raped by 3 men, and they had told me.
Before that?
No, at that party.
At that party, okay.
I had to, because I said these words, and, if you don't know Jesus, you take that as a regret. I just take it as Genesis 50:20, what was meant for evil, God turned for good to save many lives. And so I said, I want that. How do I get that? And because it was probably about $4,000 or $5,000 that I had saw. And drugs going through naked women, I want that. I need that, right?
So at that point in your life, you wanted that lifestyle.
I needed it.
Because you needed it. You were homeless.
Right.
Okay.
And which is most...
And you didn't have Christ. You didn't have a better story even.
No.
I mean, like you'd been told that that's where you would end up.
Right. Because that's my whole life, right?
Right.
Being raised in gangs, being raised in the streets, being raised around drugs, alcohol, parties. And so when they said, okay, I remember the pimp who said, I'll choose you. I went out, and that was when I started doing truck stops at 18.
Wow.
And then he would give me quotas, and if I didn't meet the quotas, I remember he threw a knife at me because I didn't meet the quotas and said, you need to protect yourself if you're going to be out there on the streets because you didn't make the money. This is your last time. Or being in a house where I couldn't use the bathroom until my pimp came back. I couldn't make a sound. I couldn't leave the bedroom. They had cameras on me all the time. And I would hop from one pimp to another. You know, I went into a hotel, staying in a hotel, pimps leaving me for weeks. I'm just getting ran through. I think I remember I said at one time, somebody asked me like, how many people had you have sex with? And I said, probably over 10,000 unprotected.
Oh my goodness.
Because I was a big girl. And so I needed to make the money. And I was, living in California, you have to be the Barbie doll. And so I had to beat the girls that were skinnier than me. So, I had to do more stuff and I had to do more things to meet those quotas so that I wouldn't go to jail or, I wouldn't go and get beaten or whatever. And so, I went through that for about a good 12-year stretch.
Oh, man.
But
and meanwhile, like no contact with your parents, or do they know what's going on at all? Do they care?
Well, I remember I think I was 18. I was 18 and it was the beginning stages, and they had got a phone call and they told me that I had called them and I said, come get me. And that's when they showed up, they came and got me. And then I got the death threats for about 6 months. I was living in my parents' house, couldn't leave. And I remember they had told me that they heard, the reason why they came and got me is because they heard a voicemail. And they heard me have a conversation with a man in a truck.
Oh, wow.
That I was trying to get him $400 from him. He was trying to give me $40. And I was like, no, I need this $400. And we argued back and forth and I just walked out. But my phone was on and I didn't even know it. So I was like, hello, hello. And then I just hung up because there was nobody there. Come to find out, it left a message on my parents' phone.
Wow.
And so from that, I, went into college. Like my parents was like, okay, you got to get back out there and stuff. But then I went back into that lifestyle again because fast money, feeling loved, right? I think I wrote in my book, called Empty Love, not feeling any type of actual affection from a father or for a man. So when a man did come and approach me and say, oh, you're beautiful. That is something completely different. When I was growing up, oh, you're fat, you're this, you're that, and my father telling me, oh, I'm saying all these things so that you don't have to feel hurt or, don't get offended when people make fun of you. You'll have a backbone, right? And so at 20, I had my son, I had my oldest son, but then I walked away from my older son for the drugs and for my pimps. And so I got heavy into crystal meth. I started running around the nation. I was leaving one pimp for another pimp, and it was like 33 different states. So from New York down to Florida, and Florida to California, I prostituted on all over the place. And then I became a madam. So then I started pimping out other women, and then putting women on drugs, and then I became a bottom, and like I did all the things just to survive. And that's why I don't like to call myself a survivor, even though that's what most people will identify as is a survivor. Survivor to me is somebody who lives in that pattern of life that makes it through to the next day. When you come to Christ, then that's when he says you're an overcomer by the blood of the Lamb and the word of your testimony. And so because of that, I said I'm an overcomer because I don't live that life no more. So for 29 years, that was my life.
So what, like that, how do you get out of that?
So I was being prostituted by 5 different groups of men. It was about probably, I want to say it was like 37 men total.
Yeah.
And I remember they wanted me to do something for them and I wouldn't. And so they gave me a phone call and they said, get out of this state by sunrise or you're dead. And so I fled back to California, and then I wanted to commit suicide. I was in a hotel smoking crystal meth, and my stomach kept on growing. And so I went to the hospital, found out I was pregnant. I denied it. I said, no, you told me I couldn't get pregnant. It was all these things. They said, no, you're pregnant. So I called my pimp and I told him, and he says, I don't care. I need my $1,500. And I said, I'm done with this life. I said, I can't. And so that's when gunshots started going off. And I had to.
From him?
From people that he sent to headhunt me. And so I was dodging bullets again. I don't know how many times I've dodged bullets. I've had, I got 4 stitches in my mouth from beats. I've have knives pulled out on me multiple times, guns to my head. And so I said, I dodged. I got into a safe house. And I'll never forget, the police said to me, you have 4 states to choose from because you're so known in the streets because of what you do in prostitution. And so he said, Alaska, Washington, Maine, and New Hampshire were my options.
Wow.
And I was like, okay, not Alaska.
Yeah,
that was
no
like,
thanks.
But there was 27 shelters I had called, told them my situation, and they all denied me.
Why would they deny you?
Because they said my situation was too severe that I would put other women in danger.
Because the men were trying to kill you.
Yeah, they were looking for me.
Okay.
And so, which usually happens, they hold their threats. They'll look for you, try to search you down. But after a while, if you've been gone for about 6 months to a year, they kind of give up on you.
Yeah.
So I called. I think it was a Friday or Saturday, and it was 6 o'clock in California, 9 o'clock in New Hampshire, and I had already called all 16 shelters in Maine who denied me. And this one shelter said, all right, I'll take you. But you got to figure out how to get out here. And I was in the Bay Area of California, and I'll never forget.
With no money.
It was $1.38, which was crazy because I used to call people because I always had money. And I remember I was calling people. I was like, hey, can I get some money? Can I borrow some money? I'll get it back to you. And they were like, oh, no, girl, you stay with money. You always with money, which is true. I always have. I was the one that spent. But the minute I was asking, they were like, no, we can't get it. So I asked the safe house I was staying at, and they said, we don't do that. And I was like, please. I was like, you all said that I have 45 days. I got a place. Can I just please? I said, talk to them. So they said, all right. So they talked to the people. Her name was Teresa at the time. And when they talked to her, they said, all right, we're going to put you on the bus. I'll never forget. She said, Teresa said to them, if you put her on a bus, she's dead before she'll get here. I'll never forget that. And that's when they said, okay. And they flew me out. And when they flew me out, I arrived in Manchester, New Hampshire, August 19, 2014. And at that point, she told me about a pregnancy center. And I remember she told me that they believed in Jesus. And I was like, I don't really care.
Yeah,
I was like,
just help me out.
I was like, if they're willing to help.
Yeah.
And so I didn't know where the pregnancy center was at. And so I originally went to a Planned Parenthood. And when I went to the Planned Parenthood, I told them my situation. I was homeless. I needed a place. And they were like, okay, great. Do you want to abort your child? And I was like, what? I kind of was taken back by it. And I was just like, I was like, nah, I'm good. And I just walked out. But
that's interesting that you weren't, like, you wanted to keep the baby.
No,
at such a desperate time.
I didn't want to keep him.
Okay.
But the way they just said it, I was just like, wait, what? Like,
okay. So it's more just their...
Like, the brunt of it, like that's not even what I asked you for. Like I asked you to help me, to keep me on off the streets. So when I'll never forget, the woman said, you need to get some clothes, because mothers, they start doing nesting, and I was like, I ain't trying to nest, like, and so I said, I need to make money, and I don't know anybody in New England. I was like, I need to get out of this place. So that's when I said, okay, I need to abort this child. And I need to go and get back into the streets and go make some money and prostitute again. But I knew that if I did that, I was going to be dead. Yeah. So I had options. Those are my 2 options. Either
and you didn't really know how to do anything else at this point because that was life.
Yep.
Okay.
And so I ended up, the shelter called the pregnancy center, and a woman named Phyllis Phelps answered the phone. And she said, send her over. And so I went over there, and she sat down. I talked to her, and she said, how can I help you? And I told her straight up, I said, I want to abort this child. And she said, why? And I said, because if it's a girl, I don't want my daughter to go through the things I went through. But if it's a boy, I said, maybe I'll have a second chance to be a mom. Because I walked away from my oldest one. And so she said, well, let's hear the heartbeat. So we went and, we heard the heartbeat, make sure he was okay. And so then she says, okay. I said, all right. I said, I'll keep him. Now what? And she said, well, I can't help you, but I know a man named Jesus. And that's when she quoted John 3:16 to me. And that's when I prayed. And at the time, I didn't know what it meant, but it was like a warm feeling. But I now know it was the Holy Spirit. And I didn't want to smoke crystal meth anymore. I didn't want to do cigarettes. I didn't want to prostitute. Like, it was like done. It was like cut. Like, it was a whole different feeling. But then I looked at her and I said, okay, great. I'm still homeless.
Yeah.
Like, what are you supposed to do?
Yeah.
And so that's when she told me about a program called New Life Home for Women and Children. I went into that program, graduated, had my son, went off to go into Bible college, got my degree in biblical theology, went back and worked with Phyllis at House of Hope, New Hampshire, helping women, rescuing them off the streets, getting the same situation. And then I ended up in the hospital working in the HR department. And I was getting sick and tired of working because I had got an email that a girl had overdosed and died. And I remember I went to the director and I said, I'm not supposed to be doing this. And she goes, you couldn't save that one. I said, no, but I can save other women.
Yeah.
I said, this ain't my job. I said, I'm not supposed to sit behind the two screens. And so that's when Phyllis handed me an application to be a director at a pregnancy center. And I said, you have lost your mind. I was like, I am a prostitute. What? I have never directed anything in my life. I don't even know how to do that.
Right.
She said, go ahead. And it is so funny because I look back and I was like, that woman handed me a hot mess. I was like, here, and put it together. And I was like, and I went in and it was November 8th. They had some stuff going on with the Constitution. They were getting stuff for abortion and reproduction rights that they were doing and voting and stuff. And it was the day that in Vermont.
They were trying to figure that. Sorry, I just want to make sure.
So they were trying to. What they did was they put it in the Constitution. They had changed or amended their Constitution to deal with the reproduction rights.
Okay.
And so they were voting for that the same night that I went in to do my interview with the board members. And I said, when I walked out, I said, Lord, I feel like I just went into a battle. And it was almost like I felt like the Lord was laughing at me. And then they hired me, and then December, I had got a phone call. I had started December 1st, and 2 weeks later, I got a phone call saying, can you testify in front of the senators of Vermont?
Wait, so at this point, you've had your son, you came to Christ, but not that long.
No,
right?
It was only I think 8-9 years that I had been a Christian.
Okay, and they're like, here you go.
Yep.
do this. Okay.
And so when I would never forget, they said, and I know that, pregnancy centers, we're not supposed to get political and stuff. And so I said, what? I said, who? And they said the senators of Vermont. I was like, for what? And they told me that there was this bill that they were writing. And I was like, what? They're like, we need to use your testimony. And I said to them, listen, it was I think it was the Right to Life organization that called me and asked me. Nobody knew who I was. And I said, if the senators send me the email and asked me personally, then I'll.
Okay.
And then sure enough, she said, not a problem. Like 20 minutes later, I got an email from the senators asking me to come testify.
And the case was about abortion?
No, this is just the bill that they were trying to put together we later on found out that it was targeting pregnancy centers.
Okay, got it.
But it was just a bill at that time, and so it was in the committee. So they wanted me to meet with the senators of the committee and stuff. And so I said, my board will tell me no. So I sent it to my board, and my board was like, yes, do it. And I was like, oh my word, these people is not helping the situation. Right. So I went, and next thing I know, I sat in front of the senators, and I'll never forget it. When I sat there, I told them, I said, I don't come to you as a director. I come to you as a client. I said, because at the end of the day, yes, I'm a director.
That's powerful.
There was a lot of moments in there. I was the first Black woman to sit as a director in a pregnancy center in Vermont.
Wow.
Ever. And then to be a Black woman in a liberal state that is pro-life and pro everything, it's like, and conservative at that much.
You are pro-life, not the state.
Not the state.
Just
Yes.
making that clear, because it
Yes.
sounded like it
Oh,
could be the state
yes.
that you were talking about.
So
Okay.
I sat there and I just told him, I said, this is personal. I said, you're going to make it to where women like me who need help can't get the help.
Yeah.
I said, please. In a very calm way, in a very Christian way, I basically said, play on your side of the sandbox, we'll play on our side of the sandbox, and leave us alone. And we won't have problems. And so sure enough, that was in February of 2023, and then of May of 2023, ADF showed up at my doorstep saying, hey, can you fight this battle with us? And I told Deb, I said, I called her up after we had that meeting, because a lot of people were afraid. We're going up against the government. It's not like the government's coming after us. We're taking the fight to them. And so I was like, okay. So I said, I need to encourage, because, I'm not from Vermont, right? So I'm originally from Cali. So who am I, right? And I was like, no, let me encourage the brothers and sisters. Let me encourage people.
Yeah, I'll help you find someone, right?
And so I called Deb. It was literally right after the meeting. I called her and I said, you're the one. And she was like, I felt that in the meeting. I said, yep. I said, I'll be there for you. I'll pray with you. She's like, you will, Jean? You'll do this? She's like, I can only get through this if you're there. I said, I'll be there. And then 3 days later, I got a phone call from NIFLA, and they were like, can you come and be a part of it? And I was like, what? But I never forget, because I told ADF, I said, because we at the time were a non-medical site. So we were the last pregnancy center at the time in 2023 that did not have an ultrasound. We were just handing out, baby clothes and material aids and things like that, and doing pregnancy tests. So when they came down on us in there, they had said that we as a pregnancy center, because we were not medical, we couldn't even give out pregnancy tests. They couldn't even do pregnancy tests in our building, because that would consider being medical. And I was like, you could go to Walmart and go to the bathroom for a pregnancy test. Are you kidding? Like, there were some things that I was just like, come on.
Yeah.
And so I sat there and I said, okay. I said, I'll do it. And through that, we battled. We didn't know. It was almost walking on eggshells. They were like, no, you can't hand out information about the APR. And I'm like, wait a minute.
Which is the abortion pill reversal.
And I was like, wait a minute. Like, how are you going to tell me that I can't, if a woman walk in this door and said, I'm going to help her. Like, you're not going to restrict me on sharing information with somebody. It's like telling somebody on the streets that you can't talk to somebody and say, hey, do you have a phone number for a dentist? Like, you're telling them that you can't give it information. So that's when, for me, because of the fact that I had been silenced all my life, I had been beaten. I told him, I said,
you don't have any tolerance for that.
Right, because then you become, it's almost like a prostitution. It's almost like a pimp and hoe relationship. You going to tell me and dictate to me what I can and cannot do, and then you think I'm going to bow down and just do it? Like, no, that's not going to happen. So that's when I said, okay, we really finna fight about this and stuff. And if it was up to me, I tell my attorneys they were going to apologize. They like, Gene, I was like, they need to apologize, because we weren't doing stuff that they were saying. They were saying that we're misleading. And I was like, I remember the senators, they said, oh, you're an island. When I testified or gave my testimony, they had said in the committee, oh, you guys are an island. Pregnancy centers are an island. You guys don't get involved in the community. I said,
hello?
Oh, really? I said, okay. So that year, for the last 3 years that I've been a director, the hospital, the fire department, the police department have been at my pregnancy banquets. I was like, I work closely with the fire department, work closely with the police department. I was like, tell me that, and I've gone to the town meetings, I've made my voice, like, everybody knows me. How do you not tell me that we're not a part of the community? And so it kind of was almost thrown back in their faces, like, what else are you saying that we don't do for the women? And like at our pregnancy center, people said that, oh, women can't have, the reason why they can't have babies is because they can't go to college, they can't finish their education. Okay, I was like, great, I got an answer and solution for that. Here you go, you have a scholarship, we'll put you through the whole school. How can you do that? Oh, because I went through it, because I'm a single mom. And that's kind of what makes my situation as a director different.
They just can't argue with your story.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's
Wow.
kind of my life and how I got here.
That's amazing. Okay, so I have so many questions.
Oh boy.
First, I want to do a side note because you are slinging around all these terms and everything. I want to say ADF. You mentioned ADF a couple times. And actually, Jean Marie and I are sitting across the table from each other at an ADF event. But let me tell our listeners, it's Alliance Defending Freedom. And we love the work that Alliance Defending Freedom is doing. So go check them out, adflegal.org. Okay, so now I want you in this season of life, from where you are, looking back at that horrible time, which I'm sure is still... to this day, I imagine you're still working through some of the lies that you grew up believing. Can you look back and see times in that really hard season, well, long years, in the really long years of that hard time, God at work still?
Now that I'm a Christian, yes.
Yeah.
Cause like I said, I had sex with over 10,000 men. And I don't have AIDS, and they were all unprotected.
Right.
I have all my teeth.
Yeah. Which are beautiful, by the way.
Thank you. But most people who smoke crystal meth don't have teeth. And I remember dope dealers giving me, they'll tell me, go smoke this, and I'll go smoke the dope. And then they'll come back and they go, here, go wash your mouth out, do this. And they would tell me exactly what to do. Don't make it sit. And they were all about your teeth got to be. I can sit back and think about all the times the protection of keeping me safe. Even when I was I've slept on beaches, I've slept on sidewalks, I've slept in the holes of the freeway, I've slept on, you name it. I've slept on glass, I've slept on ashes, and I've seen God protect me and protect my body and stuff. And that's why I say what was meant for evil, God turned for good to save many lives.
Yeah. I just think your dad let you down in so many ways. And God is our Father. Is that hard to reconcile that? Did you have a hard time
grasping who God really was?
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to ask.
Yeah. Well, of course, first, when you walk in and you say that God the Father, like, whoa,
right.
Is he going to come down and is he going to beat me? Is he going to lash me? Is he, I got to perform to get an approval, right? So that I don't get in trouble. And so when I sat there and over the years, it's been 11 years I've walked with Jesus. I've learned that he is a gracious and slow to anger God. And he's gentle. He corrects and he's gentle, and when you make a mistake, he goes, okay. The scripture says a righteous man gets up 7 times. So when you make a mistake, get up, dust your feet, keep walking.
Yeah. All right, where you are right now, how do you see God at work?
Oh, on many levels. So we'll start off with just the pregnancy center itself, right? So New England is a very, they call it the graveyard where all the, pastors go to because it's a 2% churched.
So crazy, yeah.
And so I got phone calls from different people in the church community saying, oh, let the government deal with this. Don't worry about this. And I'm like, they're like, oh, you don't know what a law is. And, I got all this kind of pushback. And over the 2 years, I've seen Christians stand up, rise up and say, okay, no, we're going to actually make a stand. We're actually going to push back. We're actually going to take a hold and really get involved. I've seen people actually get involved politically and say, no, this isn't right. And so I go, okay, we saw that change. And then I saw the change in what God's done in opening up doors and allowing me to share my story to where now they're making a movie of my life. And it's not because of me, but because there's thousands of girls that I know. I was in North Dakota and a 16-year-old girl looked at me and said, I just told my mom that my biological dad molested me and she didn't believe me. And I had to stand there and tell her I did without breaking down and crying because I know how she feels and just say, I understand. And she just breaks down and cry and said, finally, somebody believes me. That's where I've seen God work at is the open doors.
Yeah. Wow. What's the movie going to be called?
Breaking Shadows.
Nice.
Yes.
I can't wait for that. Okay. I've got one more question for you because we've run out of time already. That went fast, didn't it? Okay, last question that I like to ask all my guests, and that is, what woman from history would you have coffee with and why?
Harriet Tubman.
Okay, tell me more.
Because if she actually had the ability, she could have saved more people out of slavery, because human trafficking is modern day slavery. Even the fact of fighting for our freedom of speech is a modern day slavery, because that's what slaves do, or masters of slavery. They kept their mouths quiet. They shielded, they put a muzzle on them. And so for her to push back, I'm very much of a person that pushes back, to where if a bully comes into your face, as long as you push back on a bully, for some reason they back down and they get quiet. And so that's why I would sit down and talk with her.
Yeah, that's a good choice.
Yeah.
That's a really good choice. Thank you so much, Jean Marie, for sitting down with me and spending this time together.
Yes, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Okay, listeners, I'll see you next week.